This man made a vow to never sit down or lie flat for 12 years in an effort to grow closer to God. To maintain the vow, he sleeps while standing using suspended supports like the one seen here. Years of continuous standing have reportedly left his legs severely swollen, with damaged veins, chronic fluid buildup, thick blackened skin, and permanent deformities caused by constantly fighting gravity. But despite the excruciating pain and physical deterioration, he's continued the practice as an act of extreme religious devotion. A 41-year-old man with advanced HIV developed mysterious tumors that didn't match any known human cancer. Doctors later discovered that the growths were actually cancer cells from a tapeworm living inside his body, the first known case of cancer spreading from a parasite into a human. Here's a clip showing the terrifying teeth of a boa constrictor. While boas kill their prey with constriction rather than venom, their mouths are lined with dozens of long razor-sharp teeth that curve backwards like hooks. These teeth are designed to grab and hold struggling animals, making it nearly impossible for prey to pull free once the snake has bitten down. Unlike humans, boas also continuously replace their teeth throughout their lives, ensuring that they always have a fresh set ready for hunting. That is horrifying. This was the moment a jogger suddenly shoved the woman into the path of an oncoming double-decker bus and then kept running. Footage from London's Putney Bridge shows the woman being pushed directly into traffic just seconds before the bus reached her. Miraculously, the driver swerved just in time, missing her by inches and preventing what could have been a horrific death. The shocking footage sparked a massive manhunt, but despite clear video of the incident, police couldn't identify the runner. For years, the mystery remained unsolved as investigators searched tirelessly for the man responsible. Nearly a decade later, authorities finally tracked him down and revealed his identity: Nicholas Brandrum, a wealthy investment banker. He was soon arrested in 2025 and ultimately convicted of assault. This was the moment Dutch aerobatic pilot Noreen Melkomjohn came terrifyingly close to being ripped from her aircraft thousands of feet above the ground. During a high-speed aerobatic flight, the plane's canopy suddenly burst open and shattered, blasting her with hurricane-force wind and flying debris. The force was so intense that she temporarily lost vision in one eye and struggled to breathe, yet she somehow maintained control of the aircraft while continuing to perform emergency procedures. Despite the severe wind pressure and the constant risk of losing control, Noreen managed to safely land the plane and walked away alive from an incident that easily could have turned fatal within seconds. Billy Mays became one of the most recognizable faces on television through his high-energy infomercials for products like OxyClean and Mighty Putty. But in June of 2009, just days after the shocking death of Michael Jackson, Mays was found dead in his Florida home at age 50, adding to a string of high-profile celebrity deaths that dominated headlines that week. Initial reports suggested a rough airplane landing the day before may have caused a fatal head injury, but an autopsy later found severe heart disease to be the primary cause of death, with cocaine listed as a contributing factor. His sudden death marked the end of one of television's most recognizable faces and voices. During Liberia's brutal civil wars from 1989 to 2003, many fighters believed ritual magic could make them bulletproof and marched into battle wearing wedding dresses, wigs, fairy wings, Halloween masks, and other bizarre costumes. Some commanders even performed rituals involving animal sacrifices, charms, and amulets they thought would protect their troops from gunfire. The superstition, of course, offered no real protection, and thousands of combatants, many of them child soldiers, were killed, mutilated, or left traumatized as the conflict claimed an estimated 250,000 lives, displaced more than 1 million people, and left the country devastated for years. This was the moment a military wife was caught on camera trying to poison her husband. In 2023 in Tucson, Arizona, Melody Feliciano Johnson repeatedly poured bleach into the coffee maker of her U.S. Air Force husband during a bitter divorce. When his coffee began tasting strange and making him feel nauseous, he first assumed the machine had mold before testing it with pool strips, which showed dangerously high levels of chlorine. Suspecting he was being poisoned, he set up hidden cameras in their kitchen, which later recorded his wife adding bleach to the coffee reservoir. Although he avoided serious injury or death by pretending to drink the coffee, investigators said he believed she was trying to kill him to collect his life insurance benefits. She later took a plea deal and was sentenced to probation, mental health treatment, and a no-contact order. These are the graves believed to belong to the 63 wives of Indian General Afzal Khan dating back to 1659. Historical accounts suggest an astrologer predicted the general would die in his next battle, and fearing that his wives would remarry after his death, he ordered all 63 of them to be executed before leaving for war. Soon afterward, Khan was killed in battle just as the prophecy foretold. Today, the cemetery still stands in Afzalpura, India, a site tied to one of the darkest stories associated with honor, power, and possession in Indian history. In 1984, while filming Armor of God in Yugoslavia, Jackie Chan attempted what should have been a routine stunt, jumping from a wall onto a tree branch. But the branch snapped, sending him plummeting headfirst onto a pile of jagged rocks. His skull immediately cracked open, driving bone fragments deep into his brain. Emergency surgery saved his life, but not without leaving a permanent hole in his skull. Now covered by a plastic plate he can still feel to this day. Melissa Nelson worked as a dental assistant in Iowa for over 10 years before being fired. Not for poor performance, but because her boss found her irresistible. He told her that if his pants ever bulged, it was her fault, and claimed that her presence alone threatened his marriage. Despite the clear sexual undertones, Melissa sued him for discrimination and lost. In a shocking 2012 decision, the all-male Iowa Supreme Court ruled that it was legal to fire someone for being too attractive, as long as it wasn't based on gender, but on personal feelings. The Rarest Vids Ever Taken, Part 6. Here's some incredible footage of a black tiger marking its territory, one of the rarest big cat mutations on Earth. These so-called black tigers aren't truly melanistic, but carry a genetic glitch that thickens their stripes and darkens their coat until they look almost entirely black. Only a handful of them have ever been documented, nearly all from India's Similipal Tiger Reserve for reasons unknown to researchers across the world. Seeing a rhino with its full horn intact is becoming increasingly rare due to poaching. So many rhinos have been killed for their horns that conservation teams now remove them preemptively, making a full-grown one extremely uncommon. This colorized footage of Jerusalem in 1897 is the closest thing we have to a working time machine. This rarely seen deep-sea creature known as an oarfish washed ashore in Mexico earlier this year. Oarfish normally live thousands of feet beneath the surface and can grow up to 30 feet long, which is why their sudden beachings have fueled legends across the world for centuries. Their serpent-like bodies have inspired old nautical tales of sea monsters, and in Japan they're known as messengers from the sea god, believed to appear before major disasters. In honor of the 80th anniversary, these are the most morbid facts about the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. Here's a photo of a young Japanese boy waiting for his turn to cremate his dead baby brother in Nagasaki. When the guard said, "Give me that load, boy," he replied saying, "It's not cargo, sir, he's my brother." Photographer Joe O'Donnell said the boy was biting his lips so hard to avoid crying that it was bleeding. The intense heat from the bomb caused the Urakami River and nearby water sources to boil. Many survivors, desperate and disoriented, jumped in to soothe their burns, only to collapse and die as their bodies cooked in the water. By the next morning, hundreds of swollen, burned corpses floated through the city's waterways. One of the first Japanese cities that the US planned on nuking was its former capital, Kyoto. The only reason it wasn't bombed was because US Secretary of War Henry Stimson spent his honeymoon there and thought it was a nice place. So instead of Kyoto, they targeted Nagasaki. Nagasaki was home to Japan's largest Christian community, many of whom were descendants of persecuted, hidden Christians. Within seconds, tens of thousands were wiped out, including priests, nuns, and entire families. Some scholars believe this made Nagasaki the largest single massacre of Christians since ancient times. Because so many doctors, nurses, and emergency workers were killed instantly, many survivors went untreated for days, their flesh rotting while still alive. Entire families died huddled together, slowly bleeding, burning, or vomiting to death. Even months after the bombing, farmers in the outskirts of Nagasaki reported finding charred body parts, arms, legs, fragments of skulls scattered across rice paddies and hillsides, having been blown out of the city by the blast. On August 6, 1945, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was on business in Hiroshima when the first atomic bomb exploded. The blast ruptured his eardrums, blinded him temporarily, and left serious burns all over his body. 3 days later, he returned to his job in Nagasaki, and his coworkers called him crazy as he told the details of a single bomb destroying an entire city. Just a few hours later, a second atomic bomb was dropped nearby, wiping out most of Nagasaki, but Yamaguchi survived yet again. He's the only man who's officially recognized for surviving both nuclear explosions. In 1991, Mel Ignatow was accused of kidnapping, raping, and murdering his ex-girlfriend Brenda Schaefer in Louisville, Kentucky, but was shockingly acquitted after selling his house to pay for an aggressive defense attorney. A year later, a carpenter renovating that same house discovered a hidden compartment containing dozens of photographs showing Ignatow torturing, sexually assaulting, and strangling Brenda during the murder. But by this point, it was too late because of double jeopardy laws. He could never be retried for her killing, even with photographic proof. Instead, Ignatow was only convicted of perjury and evidence tampering and served just 8 years in prison for lying under oath. He walked free in 2006 and died 2 years later after falling down the stairs in his home, having escaped justice for one of the most documented murders in American history. In December of 2019, Anthony Topp murdered his wife Megan and their 3 young children along with the family dog inside their home in Celebration, Florida. Autopsies showed the victims were restrained, beaten, and suffocated, with evidence indicating the children were killed first. Topp then remained in the house for weeks as the bodies decomposed, sleeping nearby and conducting normal activities while masking the smells with air fresheners. When police entered the home a few weeks later, they found all 5 bodies in various stages of decomposition. Topp later admitted responsibility, though he gave conflicting accounts and attempted to blame his wife. In 2023, he was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder and animal cruelty and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Orlando Brown, who played Eddie Thomas on That's So Raven, has endured a bizarre and highly public downfall marked by addiction, homelessness, mental health struggles, and repeated run-ins with the law. Once a Disney Channel fan favorite, he's since been arrested for drug possession, faced assault charges, and made an infamous appearance on Dr. Phil, wearing eerie snake-eye contact lenses while making erratic statements. As his troubles have played out in a chaotic mix of arrests, unsettling public behavior, and strange interviews, friends and former colleagues have publicly expressed fear for his life. In 2004, Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, the great-grandson of Vincent van Gogh's brother, was murdered in Amsterdam for his film Submission, which criticized the treatment of women in Islam. His killer, a radical Islamist, shot him, stabbed him, and nearly decapitated him, leaving a knife in his chest with a note threatening the film's co-creator. Rebecca Sherrick has hyperthymesia, an extremely rare condition that lets her recall every single day of her life in vivid detail, even memories from infancy. While it may sound extraordinary, she describes it as a curse that she can't turn off. Every embarrassment, heartbreak, and trauma plays back in her mind as clearly as the day it happened, trapping her in moments that most people get to forget. In 2009, 25-year-old Matrice Richardson was arrested by Malibu police after failing to pay a dinner bill, then released just after midnight without her phone, wallet, or car. She then wandered into the mountains alone, reportedly in a state of mental distress. 11 months later, her skeletal remains were found in a canyon, her body bizarrely mummified in some areas but missing internal organs, and her clothes were scattered far from her body. Authorities insisted there was no foul play, but the condition of her remains and the decision to release her into the night remained deeply controversial. Rising French child actor and voice dubber Boris Roata was best known as the French voice of Kevin McAllister in Home Alone. But in August of 1994, at just 14 years old, he was struck by a car while cycling in the French Alps and killed instantly, cutting short a promising career that had only just begun. In 1901, outlaw Thomas Blackjack Ketchum was hanged in Clayton, New Mexico, the town's first ever execution. But with no prior experience, they miscalculated the rope length. When the trapdoor dropped, the force was so strong that it ripped his head clean off. His headless body dropped to the ground, and locals, rather unfazed, posed for postcards with the corpse, later turning the images into macabre souvenir postcards. In 2022, Twitch streamer and former adult star Adriana Chechik broke her back after jumping into a deceptively shallow foam pit at TwitchCon. The pit was barely padded over concrete, and she fractured her spine in multiple places. While hospitalized, she discovered that she was pregnant, but the emergency surgery forced her to terminate the pregnancy. Metal rods were implanted as she had to relearn how to walk and was left with lasting nerve damage. The incident sparked outrage as others were also injured, but no real accountability followed. Chechik later said the experience destroyed a part of her life that she'll never get back. In 1996, Polish model and former Miss International Agnieszka Kotlarska narrowly escaped death when she canceled her seat at the last minute on TWA Flight 800, the doomed flight that exploded midair, killing all 230 people on board. But just weeks later, fate caught up with her. As she arrived home, a stalker she once knew attacked without warning, stabbing her to death in front of her husband and young daughter. To prove that mosquitoes transmitted yellow fever, American physician Jesse William Lazier deliberately allowed himself to be bitten by an infected mosquito. 17 days later, Lazier died from the very disease he was trying to study. His death confirmed the deadly role of mosquitoes in spreading yellow fever, sacrificing his life to save millions of others. In 2016, Maze Runner star Dylan O'Brien was nearly killed during a stunt gone horribly wrong. While filming a scene involving two moving vehicles, he was violently dragged and run over, suffering a severe concussion, facial fractures, and brain damage. Production was shut down for nearly a year as he battled through physical and psychological recovery. At one point, O'Brien admitted he didn't know if he'd survive, let alone act again, saying he felt like a completely different person following the accident. Jamestown Governor John Ratcliffe, the real-life inspiration for the villain in Disney's Pocahontas, died horrifically in 1609. After being tricked and lured into an ambush by the Powhatan tribe, he was captured alive while most of his men were slaughtered. Colonial reports claimed Powhatan women skinned him alive using sharpened mussel shells, starting with his body and saving his face for last so that he'd remain conscious. They tossed strips of his flesh into a fire as he watched, then tied his fully skinned body to a stake and burned him alive, his screams echoing through the woods as a warning to any other Englishmen who dared to cross the Powhatan. In December of 2017, 23-year-old adult film star August Ames faced intense backlash after tweeting about her decision not to work with a male performer who had also done gay scenes. She explained that some crossover performers may not be subject to the same testing protocols, and that she had the right to choose who she worked with to protect her own body. While her reasoning reflected a common practice in the industry, her comments were quickly labeled as homophobic by thousands online. Despite her attempts to clarify, she was flooded with cruel messages and harassment. Just 2 days after the tweet, August tragically took her own life. On September 26, 1999, 39-year-old Gladys Ricard stood in her living room dressed in her wedding gown, holding a bouquet of flowers. She was surrounded by family and friends, taking some photos before heading to the church for her wedding. But in one haunting image, she's seen turning toward the front door, seconds before her ex-boyfriend Augustine Garcia walked in uninvited. Without speaking, he pulled out a revolver and shot her 3 times, including once in the head, as her loved one screamed in horror. The entire attack was captured on video, and this last photo of Gladys became a haunting record of her final moments before being murdered. Roseanne Barr's life has been marked by a series of dark and dramatic turns. At 16, she suffered a near-fatal brain injury when a car accident launched her through a windshield, embedding a hood ornament into her skull and triggering violent seizures. The trauma led to an 8-month stay in a psychiatric institution, where she later claimed she was over-medicated and misdiagnosed. Her career eventually soared with the TV show Roseanne, but it was repeatedly marred by controversy, including her infamous 1990 national anthem performance, which ended with her grabbing her crotch and spitting on the field. Diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, Roseanne has spoken openly about living with multiple personalities and the lingering effects of severe childhood trauma. In 2018, her career came crashing down after she posted a racist tweet that sparked nationwide backlash. ABC canceled her sitcom reboot within hours, and the network continued the show without her, writing her character off with a fatal opioid overdose in The Conners. Best known for her role on Modern Family, Sarah Hyland has undergone 2 kidney transplants and over a dozen surgeries due to a life-threatening condition called kidney dysplasia. While filming the show, she would often hold herself together just long enough to finish a scene, only to collapse in pain as soon as the cameras stopped rolling. After her first kidney transplant failed, she spiraled into depression and revealed she had actively planned for her suicide, feeling like a burden to those around her. For years, she quietly endured chronic pain, medication side effects, and body image issues, all while playing the role of a bubbly sitcom star. In 2017, a petty argument over a $2 Call of Duty wager spiraled into a fatal tragedy. After 2 gamers got into a dispute, one of them enlisted a known swatter to call in a fake hostage situation at an address in Wichita, Kansas. But the address given wasn't even the other players. It belonged to 28-year-old Andrew Finch, an innocent man with no connection to the game. When Finch stepped outside to see what was happening, a police sniper shot him dead within seconds despite Finch being unarmed. The swatter, Tyler Barris, was later sentenced to 20 years in prison, and the city eventually paid Finch's family $5 million. In honor of the 80th anniversary, these are the most morbid facts about the bombing of Hiroshima. Many people who witnessed the nuclear blast firsthand were blinded instantly. Some were even left with permanent atomic bomb cataracts like this one. When the bomb was dropped, the blast was so powerful that it permanently burned the shadows of objects and people into the ground. A few of these shadows remain imprinted in the Peace of Memorial Museum. The massive destruction of Hiroshima was caused by only a half a gram of matter being converted into energy, about the weight of a butterfly. Some Hiroshima survivors eventually grew black fingernails that looked like this. These fingernails contained active blood vessels and bled profusively when they broke off. If you're a certain distance from a nuclear explosion, you won't die immediately. Instead, you'll get third-degree burns all over your body, and your nerves will be killed so fast that you'll barely even feel it. This happened to a lot of victims in Hiroshima, and when rescuers would grab their arms to help them, their skin would slide off like a glove. The Japanese army had no idea Hiroshima had been bombed until an entire day after it happened. This was because there was no way to communicate with them, since the bomb destroyed all phone lines, telegraph lines, and radio transmitters. They had to literally fly an official out to Hiroshima to find out why they weren't communicating, and he found a city that was completely obliterated. Albert Einstein encouraged President Roosevelt to develop the atomic bomb because he feared the Nazis would make one first. But he deeply regretted this after hearing about the devastation of Hiroshima, and knowing that his discoveries led to the invention of the atomic bomb made him very depressed. Here's a watch found in the Hiroshima rubble that's permanently stopped at 8:15 a.m., the exact time of the bomb's detonation. Godzilla was created as a metaphor for nuclear weapons and was given the appearance of a Hiroshima victim. His atomic breath is meant to symbolize the blasts and devastation of the bombs, and he's covered in keloid scars to depict the brutal body scars of Hiroshima survivors. In fact, those who suffered the most from the bombings were in such horrific condition that people called them ant-walking alligators. According to one account, they were described to be, quote, faceless with their heads transformed into blackened alligator hides with red holes indicating mouths. They had once been human. When the sky exploded, they'd had the misfortune to survive. The alligator people did not scream. Their mouths couldn't form the sounds. The noise they made was worse than screaming. They uttered a continuous murmur like locusts on a midsummer night. One man, staggering on the charred stumps of legs, was carrying a dead baby upside down. None of them survived for long.